I'm Molly Heffernan, Director of Marketing for the Tory Burch Foundation, and it is an honor to be sharing today with you all. This is our small business webinar series, and today we're talking about setting the tone for the new year. Our webinar series is sponsored by the very generous Campaign Monitor, a global technology company that specializes in email marketing. They help us get into your inbox and they have made today's series possible. So we thank them and are just so excited that we can offer resources like this for free to our community. And we are welcoming back Latham Thomas for the second time. So I think many of you on today may remember Latham has joined us before. We had a beautiful session and she's back to share really strategies to reflect on the year that we have just been through and prepare us for the year ahead. Latham is a wellness and lifestyle maven, founder of Mama Glow, global maternal health and education brand. I encourage you all to go follow Mama Glow and Latham on Instagram. Latham was named one of Oprah's Super Soul 100. She serves on the Tufts University Nutrition Council, is a member of Well and Good. She provides expertise in women's wellness, pregnancy, self-care, and to top it all off is the author of 2 best-selling books, Own Your Glow, A Soulful Guide to Luminous Living and Crowning the Queen Within, and Mama Glow, a hip guide to your fabulous abundant pregnancy. So Latham, we are just so glad to have you here and are excited to process the year that we've been through and the year ahead. After Latham presents, we will have time to go through Q&A. So please, please, please use the Q&A box, ask questions throughout the session. We'll be trying to get to as many questions as we can. And I know many of you submitted questions in advance. So we are eager to dive into those as well. So with that, Latham, I know we're all incredibly excited. So I'm going to pass the baton to you and go off camera because you're the star of today.
Molly, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everyone who's at the Tory Burch Foundation and your team. It's a delight to be joining you all again this winter. We were talking about this, you all, months and months ago after our initial time together, and I can't believe December is finally here. So thank you so much, Molly. I really appreciate you. Can't wait for our juicy conversation and Q&A.
Yes, all right.
So I'm going to also share my screen, guys, so that we can sort of walk through a presentation together. And I just want to invite that today, when you're in this session with us, keep the chat flowing. That's awesome. Please remember to use the Q&A function that's at the bottom of your screen to put any questions so that Molly can look at those and make sure that we are able to answer your questions at the end. And we won't be able to answer them if they're in the chat. So make sure that they pop into the Q&A, all right? Thank you so much. Let's see if I can get my screen shared with y'all and we can get started on this presentation. Great. All right, y'all, you can see my screen. Beautiful. So welcome to Setting the Tone for the New Year, Wellness Strategies to Ground Us in 2022. Molly already did a great intro for me, so I'm not going to introduce myself again, but I am Latham Thomas. I'm excited to be here with you all in the Tory Burch Foundation. My background is that I have over 20 years experience in the wellness industry, and specifically my focus has been women's health. And so I'm bringing a little bit of a soft hand to how we can approach a lot of the tools that can support us as we navigate this next year. But we're going to start with closing out the year that we're still in. As Molly said, I founded the global maternal health platform, Mama Glow. And we serve practitioners that are doulas all over the US, as well as families in the USA and 6 continents. So what you need for today, while you all settle in, and for those who are just joining us, welcome. I want to invite you to consider a few things to have handy for this presentation. So If you don't already, and I'm sure you guys do because you've been coming to these throughout the year and last year, I know you have a pen and pad ready, but if you don't, please grab a notebook, journal, and pen, okay? Grab what you need to take notes right now because there are gonna be some reflective questions that I present. There's gonna be some exercises, and I wanna make sure that in the moment you can process. Also, make sure you're in a comfortable space and have some water or tea handy so that you can just be present. And then I also ask that you focus your attention on the presentation rather than multitasking, because this is something that we want to really make sure we can absorb right now. So, setting the tone for the new year, why is this important? So, this practice that we're doing provides an opportunity for self reflection. This is an opportunity for us to really think, how was this year for me? What were the successes and the failures? And not just from a business point of view, but in my personal life, where are the areas that I need to grow? Where are the areas of opportunity? This is also a space that allows us to celebrate the wins and mourn the losses of the previous year, right? Like where are areas where we really need to celebrate and focus on growth, and also things that needed to die off and peel away. How do we mourn and ritualize the loss? And then this is also a pivotal space for processing growth and healing, right? So for us as individuals, for us as teams, for us as leaders, what does it mean to process growth? What does it mean to make space for our own personal healing? This was a very challenging year. We are coming upon 2 years of surviving a global pandemic. And so, what does the context of the past 2 years really mean for you? How have you been processing your own emotional well-being? This is what this sort of tone setting can offer us, a space to process this. This also provides a space to explore new rituals to support your well-being. And that's what we're really focusing on today. So, rituals for closing the year, ceremonial practices that help us to complete the current year and welcome the year ahead, okay, the new year ahead. And so, I want you to think about some of the things that you do personally and then fire up in the chat. What are some of the things that you do personally that help you to close out the year? What does that look like for you? So, is it, for instance, maybe you have a journaling practice. Maybe you do, maybe you're someone who's writing down your intentions for the new year. Maybe you take a trip to a foreign place, or maybe you go home and reflect with your families. Like, what does that look like for you? So I want you to write down, fire up in the chat what that looks like for you. And let's talk about some of the practices that we can do. So one of the first things that we do, giving thanks and releasing. So this is the question that I want you to write down. What are you releasing and putting down to rest, right? And so reflecting on how the year went for you. What did you learn about yourself this year? What did you learn about yourself this year? How did things turn out differently than you may have planned? How have you grown and how have your priorities shifted? What are you ready to release as you head into the new year? Okay, so let's go over those again. What did you learn about yourself this year? How did things turn out differently than you may have planned? How have you grown and how have your priorities shifted? And what are you ready to release as you head into the new year? Okay, so write down the questions, and also inside the chat, if anything comes up for you, I want you to drop into the chat. We're here to support each other, right? This is a community. And so this is a space where we can all share what's going on for ourselves. So please, in the chat, share what's coming up for you as it relates to giving thanks and releasing. Part of our self-reflective practice, when we think about the end of the year, it is always through a context and a lens of gratitude, right? This is how we continue to move forward, because when we look at the landscape, right, of our lives and sort of what happened business-wise, personal-wise, we can sort of take stock of everything, and we can really look and see, wow, like, there were some real challenges here, but I also had some really amazing triumphs. And we can contextualize this entire horizon, right, of what our life looks like in this year, through this lens, right? And so I want you to use these reflective questions so that you can figure out what is staying in 2021, right, before we head into 2022. Okay, so reflecting on how the year went for you, really, really critical so that you can move forward. Another piece that's critical is setting intentions for the new year. So, setting an intention is the act of stating what you intend to accomplish through your actions or what you're looking to welcome through your desires, right? And this is really about a commitment to receptivity, okay? Um, One of the things that people often confuse with intentions are that they think they're goals. They're not actually goals, right? An intention is a commitment that you align your actions with, right? So if you say, I have the intention to be well in 2022, I want to feel my most vibrant and my most radiant. So to feel that way, right? I'm aligning my actions with that particular intention, which would mean that I'm going to go to bed earlier. I'm going to, stop working at a certain time of day. I'm going to make sure that, every single day I get sunshine and get outdoors living in quarantine. I'm going to make sure to spend time with friends and family. I'm going to get some exercise in if that feels good, right? So those actions line up with the intention so that we can actually create the reality that we're talking about, right? And so it's really about creating these action steps that line up with that intention so that you can welcome the vision for the life that you desire, and you can actually create that, right? So it's about designing your life, right? So setting intentions for the new year is an opportunity for us to really think about, like, what it is that we aspire to, but also what are we creating? What are we making space for? And also, how do we receive it? So before we talk about receiving, okay, and what we are calling in, because I'm sure a lot of you are writing down, like, hey, I have this intention or that intention. Um, One of the things that I feel like stops a lot of people, particularly business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, really, because solopreneurs don't have a lot of people to bounce their ideas off of, and often end up in these silos in a very isolated space sometimes when it comes to their goal setting and their desires and even their intentions. But the first thing we need to do as we close out this year so that we can make space for the new year is expand your capacity to receive. And what does that mean? It means to make more space, right? So if you think about, if you're in your home and you want to get a new piece of furniture, like, I don't know, like a new sofa, right? You can't really like bring that sofa in until you've gotten rid of your previous one and made some space for the new. So maybe you have to relocate some other furniture to create a new design, right? So this is all about making space, right? So expanding your capacity to receive is clearing out clutter. It is making space so that you can expand your life, right? And that means from a professional lens and a personal lens. How do I expand, right? Because one of the things that happens so commonly for many of us is that we ask for things and we aspire to and push for things. And then when we get them, we can't keep them, right? Because we're not in the mindset to actually keep what we ask for. We're in the mindset of going to get that thing, trying to achieve that thing. And when it comes, we're like not able to like receive it, embrace it, or even appreciate it half the time. And so when you expand your capacity to receive, you're actually awakening and quickening within yourself the ability to not only recognize when something comes that you've made space for, but also to be able to hold it, keep it, and continue to grow it. So the question I have here for you is, where do you need to make space in your life? Where do you need to take up more space in your life, right? Where do you need to take up more space in your life? Where do you need to expand in your life, right? One of the things that I think about for this is like, I live in New York City, and if you take the subway in New York, if you know what I'm talking about, when you go on the train and someone's taking up a lot of space, we call it like man spreading, right, on the train, like that kind of expansion, taking up space, right? is really critically important as you're moving into the new year, thinking about how you want to grow your personal and professional lives, right? And so we design our lives around these narratives of doubt and of sabotage. Um, and we consciously and also unconsciously believe that there's a fixed amount of happiness or success that we can actually achieve, right? And so a lot of times our actions will sort of line up in a way that kind of ends up moving us to a space where it's almost like a what do you call that? Where you have the outcome that was lined up with your bad thoughts, like your negative forecasting, right? And so you don't really want to continue down the path of shrinking. You want to continue down a path of expanding, right? And making sure that you believe, right? And bring your beliefs to a place where when you're bringing something into your life, right, through intention and through conscious action, that you can receive it and that you deserve it, right? And so reflecting on the year in the workplace, right? So this is another thing that's important. Okay, if you have employees and if you don't, if you're singular in your business, this is something that you can do for yourself, but it's a practice that you should do every year with your team, your contractors, whoever works with you. And if it's self, then do this alone. So have an employee listening session, right? Learn what matters to your staff. Make time to share year-end reflections and New Year's goals, right? Like this is something that can help everybody get on the same page to understand what's needed in terms of resources and also, how everyone's doing, right? A lot of our time is spent performing, but not really understanding what individual needs look like and what people are experiencing, what they're going through, what suffering may look like for them. And so it's really, really important for you to make sure you make space for this so that everybody can get aligned in the new year and move in a way that feels supportive and is and can provide space for you all to thrive together. Providing mental health resources and support. Okay, so hiring a counselor, coach, or therapist to come in and create a safe space for processing anything challenging. Now, I don't have to tell any of you who are on here, we have all, no matter where you live in the world, we have all suffered through the COVID-19 pandemic and the sort of like everything, the fallout, connected to the pandemic. And so for many people that may have been job insecurity, that may have been housing insecurity, insurance, the school thing, children moving, all kinds of things people were impacted by. And people bring that into their work. And so you want to know sort of how people are affected and reflect on how things went this year, what we need to put in place for next year to make sure people are well, including yourself, right? And then create resources and pathways to support so that folks do not suffer, that the year starts off in a way where people feel levity. And then create a group check-in space. So I love creating like a digital hub where you can ask folks about their highs and lows. This is one thing that we do at the beginning of every single one of our meetings at Mama Glow is we check in with each person. We ask about highs and lows. And highs are like, what has happened, since we spoke to you last, which is usually like 24 hours. What was high in the past day or two and what was the low, right? Like, was there something that you're, sort of struggling through or working through? And how can we help, right? And so we can facilitate community building through creating those spaces. So you can do that on group text. It can be Slack. It can be, WhatsApp, like whatever technology tool, as long as there's a space like this that that you can create for everyone. And this is a really great space also to create a breeding ground for goal setting that can continue into 2022. Okay, so now rituals for welcoming the new year. So ceremonial practices that set the tone for the new year. This is what we're heading to now. So again, I want you to write down what are some of the things that you do to set the tone for your new year. So maybe you go party on New Year's Eve. Maybe you have a glass of champagne, maybe you cook a specific meal, maybe you gather with family. One thing that I do with my son is that we started this when he was really little. We used to do vision boards when he was small, and then we started to upgrade that into just kind of like these really cool decorated lists of things that we wanted to work on, achieve, and welcome in. And so it was like half a goal setting list, half an intention list. And we still do that. And my son's 18 now. So what are some of the things that you do to set the tone for the new year? Fire up in the chat. Okay. So as we think about these rituals, one of the things that the new year offers is space, right? It's new beginnings. So how can we make space and create nurturing, right? This is making space and nurturing. And this is about cultivation. So it's new beginnings, right? And so this winter season, if you're in the North America, it's winter. If you're in South America, it's summer, but we're still talking about this season of shift. The new year for everyone globally is really about new beginnings, right? And it's also about kind of fertile soil, right? So we like to think about this season and this time of year as a space for cultivation, right? Planting seed. It's about cultivation, tending, and nourishing, right? So my question to you, okay, for your journal is, what are you cultivating, tending, and nourishing, right? What are you cultivating, tending, and nourishing? What is that thing that you are going to bring into fruition, hopefully in 2022? What have you been putting on the back burner? What are you working on, right? How are you going to make space to achieve that, right? What are the impediments, right, that are in your way of achieving that? Okay, so reflect on how you want to approach the new year. And some of the questions I have here are, what are you making space for in 2022, right? In terms of expanding your capacity to receive, what are you making space for, right? What are your intentions for your work community, right? What do you want for your community? How do you want them to thrive through the new year in 2022? What spaces are you going to create? What kind of new rituals or traditions will you create within your work community? What are you grateful for as we head into 2022, right? We talk about gratitude as being so critically important part of our practice. What are you grateful for, right? As we head into 2022, I want to see inside the chat. What are you ready to embrace as you head into the new year? So is there something that you can't quite get your arms around, right? But that you really want to make space to like pull in as we head into the new year? Is there something that's like a little too big, but you're trying to grow into it, right? What is that? What is that thing? What is that project? What is that, dragon for, right, that you're trying to slay? Okay, so what are you ready to embrace in the new year? And so as we think about how to integrate, right, after making space for all these questions and reflective exercises around what we're welcoming, how we're cultivating, we want to ground ourselves in practices that help us to make this a reality, right? So grounding wellness practices. And these are not new to many of you, because I know that a lot of you got through the past 22 months or 23 months using practices like this to kind of get through quarantine. And so establishing an anchoring reflective practice will support flow and connectivity. We want flow, right? We want to feel flow, free flowing energy when it comes to ideas, when it comes to solutions, when it comes to our personal lives, right? But in the workplace, we want there to be constant communication and energy flow. That is the hallmark of a healthy business environment, right? Free flowing energy and ideas, trust and communication, right? And so when we have some practices that we're doing personally, but that we can also integrate into our community at work, this can also create a space for us to facilitate that flow and connectivity. So meditation and mindfulness, starting, the day or starting any sort of meeting or activity with just a couple of breaths to get everybody in sync, right? Doing that when you find yourself, feeling a little overwhelmed, just taking some time away for a few breaths. But even starting your day with some meditation and mindfulness. Journaling, really, really important. You guys are doing that right now, right? journaling so that you can look back and see how you've grown, but also to write down what's coming up for you to be able to process in the moment. Movement, right? Moving your body, whether that's, kickboxing, yoga, taking a walk, running, dance, whatever you need to do, twerking, whatever you need to do, okay? Move your body. Nature and the outdoors, right? I love getting outside. A big thing that sort of saved me in quarantine was gardening, okay? And I have my little garden in Brooklyn, and I had everything growing, you guys, okay? And that was really great for me to just get outside, to be watering my plants, harvesting and being able to, just take that time to slow down. So getting outdoors, getting into nature, so important for your nervous system, and also to help the body relax, and also to slow down the mind. Connecting with community. I mean, we know this, right? It is so critically important to be around family and friends and people that make you feel good, right? And so, what does community look like for you? How do you cultivate community and and ensure that as you continue to expand your business, that community is at the center? Phone fasting and digital detoxing is critical. We are in a time, we're living through a time where there's unprecedented access to technology. We are moving at an accelerated pace, and it is really hard for humans to keep up from the evolutionary standpoint that our brains were developed at. Okay, our brains cannot handle this amount of stimulation, and so it's critical to make space for you to log off of social, log off of, email, stop text messaging right away, maybe just shut off your phone. I do this thing where I shut it off for like a full day and just spend time with family. I spend maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 days a week or something. I might go on Instagram. I really stay off of social and makes time to really get into things that really matter to me. And of course, if social is part of your business plan, there are all kinds of apps that you can do where you can schedule posts so that you can take time away from a lot of these digital products. Okay, so make time for that, and that can be something you do over the holidays as you set into the new year. Create a framework so that you can healthily utilize these tools. And then you want to make sure also that you're aligning with the lunar cycles. Okay, and I'm going to talk about what that means shortly. But aligning with the cyclical phases of nature, there are inherent ebbs and flows that we can actually tune into and attune our bodies to and our business to. And I'm gonna get into that as well. So I want to ask you, in what ways are you integrating wellness practices to support flow? Okay. In what ways are you integrating wellness practices to support flow? All right. Write that down, write your answer. Okay, and now here we are, new moon and full moon rituals. And so I'm excited to talk about this because for the new year, January 2nd, which is apropos of what we're talking about, January 2nd is the new moon, okay? The first new moon of 2022. And then January 17th will be the first full moon of 2022. Why is this important? Because new moons represent fresh starts and new beginnings. New moons represent fresh starts and new beginnings. Okay, full moons mark moments of culmination and completion. Full moons mark moments of culmination and completion. And so setting intentions and grounding yourself in rituals during these potent periods can also help you harness your energy and support your business. Okay, so I want to walk you through what each of these phases can offer. Okay, so for the new moon, it's conception and introspection, right? And so during the new moon, it's a good time to set intentions, right? New goals and gather new insights and ideas for new projects. So if you are in a project phase where you're at the inception, where you're maybe drafting a proposal, where you're brainstorming, whiteboarding, this is the space to do that in the new moon. Okay. It's a good time for vision boarding. If you want to do that for personal or professional reasons, it's a good time to begin product launches, not to get your launch out into the world, but to begin the process It's a great time for sales and marketing campaigns to get those underway, and also to begin production of new content, and also to explore new business relationships and partnerships. So this is where we do that, right? In the new moon, okay? With that energy, okay, of conception, of introspection, and cultivation, right? In the full moon, we're talking about completion and expression, right? So during this time, you close a circle on projects which are culminating and coming to completion or launching, right? And so everything that sort of started in the new moon cycle, and this doesn't have to be in a singular month, right? This can be, several phases, right? That you've gone through. Maybe it's 6 months in, you're working on a project and you launch it on the full moon, right? So during this time, right, reap the benefits of reaching your goals. If you haven't yet met your goals, that's okay. You're going to reevaluate and recalibrate so that you can, on the new moon, kind of come up with a new plan for how you want to move forward, right? And you want to also move at a sustainable pace, right? It's not about rushing yourself and catapulting. It's about taking the time to move with ease. Okay, that's really important so that we don't burn out. I did a session months ago about burnout, and we know it's real. It's actually now a clinical diagnosis. Okay, we want to avoid that. And so you want to move at a sustainable pace. So full moon is aligned with launches, celebrations, completing, collaborating, partnering. And also you can interview people or take interviews for opportunities, and reflect and recalibrate during this period. Okay. And so here's some of the practices also that you can do during this time. So creating a sacred space, like I place flowers, crystals, candles, and create like sort of this levity, this beautiful energy around me for this practice, while I am bringing in the new energy of the new moon, clearing your energy. So think about like ways that you can, clear the space around you, right? Sometimes people feel like, oh my gosh, everything's so stagnant, the energy's stagnant, or my own energy feels really stagnant. Clearing your energy, maybe lighting incense or candles, or even, using sage to smudge your space. These kind of things can also be very helpful. I always use bowls of water, and I use what's called agua de Florida, or Florida water, and I use that in the water because it cleanses, and I use that as a way to create cleansing and opening energy, right, in the space that I'm inhabiting, right? And so think about not just you personally, but the space that you're in. How can you clear the energy in that space? It also can be as simple as just opening the windows and letting air flow through, right? Set your intentions, write down what you're cultivating on the new moon or celebrating and releasing on the full moon, okay? Make space for mindfulness during this time too, right? Sit in silence or in sound. If you're somebody who cannot sit for meditation, that's fine. A lot of people say they can't sit still. It's not about sitting still, it's about being present, right? And so sometimes that means having, audio, right? Like finding a really cool audio that allows you to feel at ease, something with no lyrics that can help you just get into a space where you're relaxing your nervous system, okay? And then giving thanks. We talked about gratitude being one of the most powerful tools in our arsenal. So giving thanks as part of this practice. And establishing your annual organizational values. This is the final piece that I want to share, and something that is really important to me, and something that I think that you should integrate, and it'll probably be important to you as you move through 2022. So as you head into the new year, choose 3 words that exemplify the values you want to aspire to in your work and personal life. And so this is critical as a compass. Okay. And we think about like where we want our business to head, where we want our employees to move towards. It's like sort of like steering a ship, right? And so you're going to choose 3 words that like really speak to like how you want to move and it's sort of like the lens through which you look at everything for the year, right? Is this specific um, lens of your organizational values. And so what are your organizational values? These values serve as your internal compass for the year. So you think about the 3 words, because when you're making decisions, you're going to ask yourself, does this serve our organizational values, right? You're going to have your employees and staff also share how the values resonate with them. You're also going to align with projects and workflow that serve the organizational values. You're also going to bring your organizational values into client interactions, right? So if you're working with a new client, if you're prospecting, whatever that looks like for you, you're going to bring that in, right? I'm going to give an example, but I want people to write inside the chat what your organizational values are. So think about some values that you want to embody, right? That you want to uphold, that you aspire to, okay? And think about like how you would make a decision based on those values. So, for example, right, say one of my core organizational values is to is ease, right? Is feeling ease, um, say empowerment and community connection, right? So say those are my values, right? Ease, empowerment, community connection. I'm just throwing those out. So if somebody comes and says, hey, we want to do a project with you all, and they start outlining and I'm listening, I'm running it through this compass of ease, of empowerment, and of community connection. So I'm like, how does this serve ease? How does this get us to a place? Is this easeful? Is this process going to be, easeful and regenerative and supportive? Are we going to feel empowered on the other side of this project? Does this feel empowering to pursue? Um, how does this help me to facilitate community within the workforce or with the partner, right? Like that is how you're approaching it, right? So you're asking yourself, like, how does this align with my organizational values, right? And so it's not your personal values, right? Because your personal values and your organization's values aren't always, they're always congruent, but they're not always the same, right? They're always congruent, but they're not going to always be the same. There's going to be certain things that your business needs and your organization needs to move a certain direction that may not be what's happening in your personal life, right? So these really need to be, these really need to steer in a direction of how your business needs to go, right? And your personal response will always be to be in service of those values because they also feel aligned with your personal values, if that makes sense. Okay. So you want to also make sure that when you come up with these, that you maybe sit with your team. And this is something you can do before the end of 2021, right? Or it can be in the first week back, right? And you could do it on, in and around the new moon. Let's sit down and talk about our organizational values, okay? And ask people, think about 3 words that you feel like we need to be moving towards, aspiring to, or embracing as a company. And everybody can bring their suggestions in because we want to know how these annual organizational values resonate with the entire team, right? So bring that into your practice as well, and then use that as a way to facilitate more thoughtful interaction around how you engage in business, right? We should be thinking, obviously, with our minds, but like we also have to move with our hearts, right? Business is also about, and as you all are cultivating businesses, it's also about, doing something that's impactful for the world, right? And how can we move in alignment also with our heart? And so the question I have for you is, how do your organizational values make you more powerful as a company? How do your organizational values make you more powerful as a company, right? So write down some things to reflect on, right? You guys will get a little handout so that you can ask yourself some of these questions and continue the work. But I want you to bring this in because this is a powerful way for us to kind of keep on track and set the tone for our year, okay? And then use this as a way to recalibrate at different points, right, throughout the year when we need to find our way back, right, to center. So this is one of the ways that we do it internally, and that I'm happy to share with you. And thank you so much for your attention on this. I'm Latham Thomas, and I'm glad to be in conversation now with Molly. And stop sharing my screen.
So there was so much fantastic advice that you shared, and I think a lot for everyone here to chew on, but I wanted to jump back to intention setting. It was sort of a question I've seen bubble up in the chat. I know one I had personally. How can we, when we are going back and setting our intentions, avoid the temptation to redesign our entire lives? Like I might write down, I'm going to become a farmer. I'm going to do all those things with my family, quit everything because I'm trying to set different intentions. So what are your recommendations for us to not fall into that?
Yeah. So, I think that we're like, life is just like a journey and it's a process, right? All of this is process. And so if we think about how we're approaching everything from a lens of process rather than the product or outcome, then we start to think about, well, how do I want to feel as I take this journey? So when you're thinking about, okay, I want to be doing farming, I want whatever it is. Okay, cool. But it might be like, um, every day I'm going to get outside and I'm going to water just, my plants. It's something simple, right? It doesn't have to be that, you might be headed in the direction of that huge goal or dream, but like, how do we start small? How do we start at the seed level? And that's why I like doing the new moon and full moon piece, because what I love about that is that if you look at the lunar cycle, like we start from a dark moon where you can't see anything in the sky to full moon where it's fully illuminated, right? You can look outside, you don't even need any street lights because the moon is so bright, right?
Yeah.
And it goes from like something you can't see to something fully illuminating, in this 28-day cycle. Okay. And we have cycles in our lives like that, where something starts from the seed level inception and then grows into something, into fruition. And that can take time. And while we're allowing time to move at a pace that it does, if we can remember that like everything takes time, and that we are also a work in progress, and we are also a work of art. If we can take our time to really be present, while we're doing whatever that thing is, then I think it can help us like stay away from this idea of like hustle, hurry up and like achieve this thing. Okay, now I check this off. Like it's not a checklist, right? It's more of, like your intentions are really almost like like a way for you to make more space in your life to receive something even bigger, by the way, than you already can perceive. So it's just lining up my actions with this thing. So okay, you want to be a farmer? Cool. Guess what you're going to start doing? You're going to start getting plants. You're going to start watching these little videos online. You're going to probably take some courses. You're going to start lining up these little things on the way. And then all of that kind of leads you to where, like, in 5 years, I'm on Molly's farm, right? But we don't have to start with like, okay, let me go get the outfits and buy the tractor, and right. We can start here, like doing little things along the way. And so if we think about it from that lens of, my intention is to, be in, more aligned in community with nature, right? I still might become a farmer, but my intention is to be in this space, and to be right in this certain space. And I think that's where we want to be more so than like doing, rather it's like more being than doing, if that makes sense.
I like that a lot. And I think all of this advice lends itself to a recurring question. And I suspect one you get a lot. And Christina asked it really beautifully in the Q&A box, which is, how do I figure out boundaries and limits? How much work, how much working out, how much family time? Like, we're so compartmentalized often.
Yeah.
Any advice for us here?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Molly and Christina, like for the vulnerability, right? Because it is really hard. It's hard. I mean, I have days where it's like, I'm like, okay, it's 9:30, I'm gonna go to bed, right? And I do that. And then, 2 days later, it's like Succession, season finale. And then I had to watch it again. And right.
Yep.
I'll till 2 in the morning, like, going down a rabbit hole of like, it's like you do things like this to yourself. You're like, I'm exhausted the next day, right? Or you wait till the last minute to get something done and you're hustling and this. I like to think about it from this lens of dynamic equilibrium. And what I mean by that is we have been taught that balance is the goal, right? Oh, we got to balance, work-life balance, right? Which, by the way, doesn't exist, right? You're never going to get to a place where you're never going to get to a place where things are just like this, because that means you're not alive, right? Nothing's like this.
Flatline.
Nature is flow. Nature is chaos. Nature is energy. Nature is movement. And so when
Mhm.
anything is still, like when water is still, it's not good. When water is still, water needs to be moving, right? Blood
Yeah.
needs to be moving, energy needs to be moving, air needs to be moving. So that is a sign of life, right?
Mhm.
Chaos is life. Okay. So think about it like this. Dynamic equilibrium is how have you ever been to the circus and you
Oh
see,
yeah.
like we used to do when I was little, we used to love the circus. And because
Mhm.
the tightrope, because I'm scared of heights, but I was fascinated by this. The tightrope walker carries a pole, right? Now they carry the pole, which gets them to the other side,
Okay.
okay, of the tightrope. But they don't carry the pole for balance. They carry the pole because it keeps them off balance. So it's what throws them off balance, which gets them to the other side. Not balancing.
Oh.
It's doing, it's moving, right? It's being
Mhm.
in flux. It's being, that is how we get there. So this idea of, oh, I gotta like, have everything perfect and equal is not gonna happen. There's gonna be some days where you have to devote all your energy over here because you have a screaming baby and somebody hurt themselves and you're doing homeschool, right? And then you have another day where there's a fire you have to put out business wise, another thing where their family member has some, like, this is always what we're thrown, kind of these curveballs that throw us into what is dynamic equilibrium, which means that
Mhm.
you're constantly moving and responding to needs based on what balls are in the air. So if we think about the fact that that will never go away, because it won't, right? Instead of like, okay, I can't wait till there's nothing, because there will never not be nothing.
Right.
How do I actually recalibrate myself to have a response that allows for, the supports that I need
Mhm.
to actually respond to those things, right? So
Yeah.
what does it look like to have support in place if, if a family member has failing an illness, what does it look like to have supports in place if I have to work from home? What does it look like? Like, how do I start to design my life in a way that I feel more equilibrium, right?
Mhm.
So it's about actually designing your life, right?
Yeah.
And part of that, like the person had asked, boundaries are a really powerful tool to help us figure out like what stays in and what stays out. And one of my friends has this beautiful saying that fences keep good neighbors, right? So where do
Huh.
we put fencing in our lives? Right?
Right.
I can tell you because I don't live your life, right? Only you
Mhm.
know like where you begin and where you end, right?
Mhm.
So it's really, you have to feel your way through that and say, this feels too close or too much. And the days where it's too much. The days where you're like, I went past my limit. Like
Yes.
I shouldn't still be awake, right?
Mhm.
Or the days where you push through and you're like, "Ugh, I didn't do a good job because I didn't sleep well." The
Mhm.
days where you were snappy with your child because you had this other, right? What it looks
Yeah.
like. And so if we can actually in that time use our reflective tool, the journaling, we can write
Mhm.
down also, hey, like this happened, it didn't feel good. And we can ask ourselves some of the questions around like, what would it look like to design a space that allows me to feel supported. We have to actually create that because we're in a society that has built systems against caregiving, systems against support. And so many of us are actually caregivers. We're supporting ourselves, our teams, right? And
Mhm.
so we actually have to now figure out how to separate. And it's loving separation, by the way,
Yeah.
right? Ourself from these things that can bleed into every aspect of our lives. And we have to
Yeah.
figure out like how to compartmentalize when necessary,
Mhm.
also knowing that everything is still fluid, right? Like everything runs into the next thing.
Yeah.
So I don't really recommend trying to put things in neat boxes, because then that's your focus, is like how to like make sure something is like a certain, you
Mhm.
know, trying to control.
Right.
Rather, how do I surrender to, this is what my life is? How do I design it, um, a life that I don't have to escape, you know?
Mhm.
Like I don't have to take a vacation and come back and be like, oh, my life is chaos. Like you can't go away from you have to actually address what it is, right? And so what does it look like to now create something that I
Mhm.
can actually live sustainably and feel
Yeah.
support, right? And boundaries are critical, but I can't tell you how to erect them. Only you know how to build your own fence, right?
Yeah. And so in that, there's a lot of self-reflection. Is there any advice? I think a lot of people here who are leading teams or even on their own, it seems like a big mountain to climb. Are there ways to have accountability support? Are there people that we should be leaning on, or methods to hold ourselves and each other accountable?
Yes, I love that question. I, I believe in having kind of like how you would have your board for your company, like
Mhm.
kind of having like a personal board of directors, which is like a little bit like, it can be a friend circle, but aside from being a friend circle, I think some people who are like a little bit, distant from your life, who can provide more perspective, having people who have different lenses on life experience to show up for
Mhm.
you. Yeah, I think having community is really key, right? To just to navigate and to have people who you can bounce ideas off of. I think you can find some of those people. Well, number one, I think that uh, there's a lot of people I feel like who I've looked to that I've never met, right? Who I've
Uh-huh.
just watched how they've moved, and I've taken, what I've heard them say. I'm like, oh, I love that. Okay, yes, I can do that in my life, right? So you
Yeah.
don't have to know all of your mentors, but some of them you will. And then I
Mhm.
think outside of that, like, outside of just the friend group of support, having the people who will give you loving perspective, the people who will help you expand your vision, the people who will believe in you, invest in you, introduce you to people, like these kind of people you have to have in your
Mhm.
corner. And
Yeah.
so part of that is convening in spaces like this, right? And so the Tory Burch Foundation created this amazing space for us to gather in community, to learn, but also to meet each other. And at the beginning of this conversation, Molly was like shouting out, like folks were like, "Oh, hey, I'm in Ohio," right? Like, to find your people. Your people are here, for
Mhm.
example, right? And so I believe that is really important, especially because we've been living through isolated times, right? We've been living
Yeah.
on screen, these little boxes. I don't know if I've ever
Mhm.
hugged Molly in real life, right? So we've been living like this,
Someday.
right? We've been living like this for like 2 years. So it feels really
Yeah.
good to be in community with people face to face, right?
Mhm.
You need that. And so figure out what that looks like for you. Like, is it like having, a weekly check-in on Zoom with somebody, but is it like having like once or twice a month in person where you can connect and just like, uh, debrief, and then also maybe watch like an episode of whatever the new hot show is together. Like, find a way to do that so that you have that sounding board,
Yeah.
that you need, absolutely. And then also make sure to kind of cultivate that group, because you don't want it to be that when you're in crisis you reach out and you're now having to lean on people only in crisis. Like, constantly cultivate. So make sure, like I talked about that group text thing that you could do for
Mhm.
your in your workflow, maybe do that for this kind of like, personal board of directors, right? Like,
Yeah.
have your key people. I would call them vision doulas for the work that I do,
Uh-huh.
right? Have that
Yeah.
little group of people that you can tap.
Mhm. I love that.